What is up, people of DW Nation? Well, it is Tuesday morning. I got some big stuff for you guys. I break down everyone who is a part of the cuts from WWE this past weekend. Big news regarding Vince McMahon possibly selling WWE. We also have the location of Summerslam revealed, what happened on SmackDown this past Friday, and I break down the Raw recap. So without further ado, I'm Kevin Jones, the Disciples of Wrestling, and let's hop into it. So I start off with the WWE Cuts. Now, these were 6 people who seemed to be very, very shocking that they got released. So let me go ahead and hop into these list of people. So starting off, we got Braun Strowman, Aleister Black, Buddy Murphy, Ruby Riott, Lana, and Santana Garrett. So this list is quite shocking to me because of the people who were on it and where they stand in the company before they got released, actually. We got Lana and Ruby Riott, both a part of Sound Tag Teams in the WWE Women's Division in the chase for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships, currently held by Tamina and Natalya. Then, of course, we have Aleister Black, who's been built up with video package after video package, and of course was set up to be in a feud with Big E. Next up, we have Braun Strowman, who has been made into a very, very bona fide main event card. And of course, he had the big match with Shane McMahon on WrestleMania, then got booked into a triple threat match for the WWE Championship against Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania Backlash. Then, of course, next up, we got Santana Garrett, who was rumored to be booked heavily nicely to be debuted on SmackDown in their SmackDown Women's Division. Now, the only person that I could see that wasn't really a surprise was Buddy Murphy, due to the fact that ever since his feud with the Seth Rollins and the Mysterios, he's really dipped off. He looked like he was going to be as a disciple for Seth Rollins once again recently, but that got dropped before they really got the ball rolling on that one. But other than that, all of these people have seemed to be very, very shocking releases. But there's been some stuff that has come out recently that could possibly justify these releases. Now you ask, what could justify releasing these 6 talented people? Well, it has been come out as of the end of the week from last week that Vince McMahon is looking to sell WWE. Reasoning being, I don't know. It could be the old age, but I have no real indication on why he could be selling the company. Now, from the looks of it, he was going to give the company to, of course, his family, Triple H, Shane, and Stephanie. But as we have seen, if you really look at the proof of the pudding with the Wednesday Night Wars, it looks like Triple H cannot go against AEW and win a sound competition on a week-to-week basis. So I can see where he could see that Triple H isn't exactly ready for it. And of course, we have the new acquisition that WWE have brought in backstage, which is Nick Khan. Now, from what people have really, if you look deep into it, ever since Nick Khan has been an acquisition for WWE, we have seen all of these cuts. Of course, the first round that came after WrestleMania and this round that has happened now. And then, of course, reports have come out that is rumored that NBC and WWE are in negotiations for NBC to be the one to buy WWE. Now, none of these are really confirmed yet. All of these are rumors as people are trying to figure out why these 6 people who had things going on, except for Buddy, of course, why they got released. And of course, it makes sense why Vince would make them on the business strategy on why he would release these people as, of course, if you release big contracts, then of course you want to be as profitable as possible for someone to possibly buy WWE. But until anything else really comes out, that's all we got so far. But of course, the more and more this story unfolds, of course, we will be covering it in Disciples of Wrestling. With more news from WWE, the location of SummerSlam has been revealed. It will be Las Vegas that they will be holding SummerSlam this year, as of course, full capacity fans will be back. And possibly, from the looks of it, and of course from the rumors, that it looks like Cardi B will be the special guest host for this event. And I don't know how I feel about this one so far. I didn't even know she knew anything about wrestling. So it'll be very nice to see how this turns out, or it could be very painful to watch. But there's only one way for us to find out, and that's for us to get there in August to see SummerSlam. Now, as we didn't get the real chance to break down everything in the Raw recap due to me having some personal stuff going on outside, I'm about to give you guys a nice little breakdown of what happened this past week. Now, first off, the main storyline. It was the Usos gaining the WWE SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Now, of course, they had the match against the Mysterios that they lost due to technicalities. Well, I wouldn't say technicalities. Jimmy Uso ended up getting rolled up by Dominic Mysterio, where he ended up kicking out in the pinfall, but the ref never saw it, so he counted it 3, and of course, that brought to an Usos loss. Now, of course, the Usos are going to be frustrated about it because on the video, it clearly saw that Jimmy ended up kicking out. But Roman still wasn't happy, as he told them before the match, dude, of course, everyone knows about their family. When they go to set something out, they go do it. And he said that the whole family's watching, so don't mess this up. And of course, that means Roman is still frustrated from them losing to the Mysterios. And he told them, make it right. You got until the end of the night. So they end up going to Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville, and the match is made for later on. We actually see the rematch of the Usos versus the Mysterios. Now, the first match was the match of the night, and the second part was actually pretty close, where we saw a very, very even match between these two, where this time around it was more in the favor of the Mysterios. As the 619 was hit and the Frost Splash was hit from Rey Mysterio onto Jimmy Uso, we see Roman Reigns come out and actually Superman punch Dominic before he even gets the chance to do the Frog Splash. And we see Roman Reigns take out the Mysterios. And as he's choking out Dominic, Jimmy Uso tries to stop him. And then he just says he can't be a part of this and leaves. And as Jay looks to leave, Roman gets in his face and we go off. As we end up seeing Roman Reigns just finish off Dominic Mysterio into the after credits. Now, what else happened in the show? We actually saw the confirmation that it will be at Hell in a Cell. It was Bianca Belair defending her championship against Bayley, as Bianca Belair called out Bayley earlier in the night, where she flat out said that the laugh was really getting to her and the rookie comments were starting to build up frustration in Bianca Belair. Then, of course, we see as the night progressed, Otis and Chad Gable start to get under the skins of the Street Profits. They end up trying to get coached by Chad Gable, get denied. Otis ends up coming to justify and get the Street Profits to apologize. They decline. Otis takes them out, and the Profits are ready. So in this week coming up on SmackDown, we'll get Street Profits versus the Alpha Academy in a tag team match. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for me to break down the Raw recap. Now we start off the night with the Raw Tag Team Battle Royal, where the winner is the #1 contenders for AJ Styles and Almost for the Raw Tag Team Championships. Now, of course, before the match, we end up getting AJ Styles and Almost to come out, and they flat out said, when we get back on the road and when the people are back is when these tag titles will be defended like they should be. And of course, as he's talking up all the teams, we see John Morrison and The Miz come out as The Miz is still in the wheelchair. We see that John Morrison is inserting himself to the Battle Royal to represent his team. Now we start the match with RKOs from Riddle and Randy onto the New Day and Lindsay Dorado. Now we kick this thing off after commercial break, and we see very quickly Lindsay Dorado and John Morrison end up getting eliminated. Now T-Bar and Mace go crazy for a little bit, and eventually all the teams gang up on T-Bar and Mace and eliminate the two. Now we see the Viking Raiders end up building momentum as they eliminate Riddle and they eliminate Xavier Woods. Now, of course, as they are looking to get rid of Randy Orton and Kofi Kingston. Both of them tend to build up momentum, and it looks like they were going to work together. But Kofi sets up for the Trouble of Paradise and ends up hitting Matt Riddle, who inserted himself back into the match after being eliminated. So we see Kofi get eliminated by Randy Orton, and then we see the Viking Raiders eliminate Randy Orton. So officially, the Viking Raiders will be challenging AJ Styles and Omos for the Raw Tag Team Championships when fans are back. Now we go backstage, and it is Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair approaching Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville, both wanting a match with Nikki Cross to avenge their losses from these beat-the-clock challenges. Now, of course, neither one of these two can agree, and Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville have a bright idea, which is Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley teaming up against Nikki Cross and a partner of her choosing, or we find out later on that it is the woman known as Asuka. Our next match of the night, it is Elias versus Jackson Ryker. Elias is out. He's talking crap. He's talking crap about Jackson Ryker and how Jackson just, he wouldn't wake himself up and understand that they were in it to win the tag team championships as he left him last week. And of course, this brings out Jackson Ryker with a fresh cut, and he's going right after Elias. The match starts, and he's pummeling Elias all up until Elias can even the odds by shoving him into the steps outside the ring. But eventually, Jackson Ryker builds the momentum back up, which is too much for Elias. So much that Elias just leaves and takes the count out. And of course, that means to Jackson Ryker getting the victory. But clearly from Jackson Ryker's face, this ain't good enough. Next up, we got the contract signing for Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre at Hell in a Cell. Drew McIntyre comes out and he cuts a promo. Of course, because Bobby Lashley gets introduced and he doesn't come out. So Drew cuts a promo about how people have been coming at him for fighting Bobby again and again and again and losing again and again and again. And he flat out says this time will be different. But that's what he said last time, so I don't know about this one. But of course, we end up seeing as Drew goes to go sign the contract, MVP interrupts him and introduces the almighty WWE Champion himself. He comes out, and before we even get to the contract signing, MVP flat out said, hey, how about this time around, this is the last time you can wrestle Bobby for the WWE Championship. And Drew agrees, but under one condition, it'd be in a Hell in a Cell. So they both agree, and of course, Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville sanction it, and they sign the contract for it to be official. Now we get Ricochet versus Humberto Carrillo, with the winner facing Sheamus for the U.S. Championship. Now, Sheamus is out at ringside area with the little face mask as he had a broken nose and got the surgery this past week. But we end up starting off where we see both of these two, Humberto and Ricochet, fake a dive onto Sheamus to work him up. But Ricochet ends up taking advantage of this, taking out Humberto early. But eventually we see Humberto Carrillo getting back into this match with a one-arm powerbomb for a near fall. Now these two go back and forth for a very entertaining, like 5-10 minute match that ends up going off to the apron, where Ricochet goes to run up and hit a move on Humberto, where he ends up catching Ricochet and hitting a Spanish fly that leads to both of these two getting counted out in a double countout. Now, what does this mean for these two, as the winner was supposed to go after Sheamus for the U.S. Championship? As of right now, it just means none of them are going after Sheamus for the U.S. Championship. So I'll be very curious on how they'll be spinning this off next week. But next up, we end up finding out that next Monday, we will get the re-debut of Eva Marie and the Evolution. Now, we get the tag team match of Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley versus Asuka and Nikki Cross. Now, starting off, we see that Rhea Ripley and Charlotte are in control, just as they're looking to one-up each other. Now, this ends up going right before the commercial break, where Charlotte gets tired of Rhea, and she smacks her right in the face. Now, we get back, and Rhea's clearly still upset about that, and these two end up taking over, as, of course, the pure dislike for each other ends up transferring over to beating up Nikki Cross. Now, eventually, Nikki Cross ends up tagging in Asuka. Asuka goes wild with a nice hot tag, and this leads up until Rhea Ripley and Charlotte headbutting once again about disliking each other and end up in a brawl, where eventually we end up seeing Charlotte hit the natural selection, where Nikki Cross ends up pinning the Raw Women's Champion for the 1, 2, 3 and the win. Now we get Mansoor versus Drew Gulak in a match where before the match we actually saw Mustafa Ali confront Mansoor backstage, and he pretty much said, hey, what's going to happen when you get out there? Are you willing to do whatever it takes? Because what happens when Drew is tired of playing the nice guy and goes after single-handed dirty tricks? Are you willing to do the exact same thing? Well, we find out in the match, actually, where Drew Gulak takes over most of this match and just using submission after submission, and eventually he goes for a roll-up using the tights, but Mansoor ends up reversing this, end up leveraging a pin himself for the 1, 2, 3. After, of course, the confusion from the Battle Royal, where Riddle comes in and took the Trouble of Paradise, we got made a match later on where it'll be Kofi versus Matt Riddle, and now is the time. Now, we actually see these two where Kofi is really owning Riddle for most of this match. He owns him so much that Randy Orton comes out to possibly start coaching Riddle up. Now, Kofi ends up taking out Randy Orton, and when Randy Orton gets up, of course, he's all worked up, so he takes out Xavier Woods. Now, this leads to the trust fall from the top rope to the outside on Riddle and Orton. Now, of course, after this, we see Matt Riddle start to build up momentum, even hitting the Randy Orton draping DDT and setting up for the RKO, as, of course, Randy Orton himself is coaching him up through it. He even lets Riddle know, you're taking too much time. And, of course, this is, of course, right, as Riddle ends up getting reversed by Kofi from the RKO and getting set up for the Trouble of Paradise for Kofi Kingston to get the win. Now we have Alexa's Playhouse, where the special guest is Shayna Baszler. Now, of course, while Alexa's talking, before she can even introduce Shayna, Shayna comes out. And she flat out, Alexa ends up asking Shayna to apologize for what happened last week to Lily. And, of course, Shayna's like, why do I need to apologize? You're the reason why me and Jax are currently not the tag team champions. And now, of course, Shayna's worked up, but she takes Lily and says, I'm sorry for you being a stupid doll. And, of course, Alexa gets all worked up to get into a scuffle where Baszler throws Alexa out of the ring, and she ends up stomping on Lily. Now, of course, Shayna don't think nothing about this until after the lights flicker. She runs out of the ring, and fire pyro goes crazy. And, of course, so she runs backstage in chase of possibly leaving the entire arena. But we see backstage equipment falling down, and we see as Shayna tries to get out of the arena, all the doors are locked. So what does Shayna do? She goes to a room. She ends up locking herself in, stacking up everything on the door. And of course, she's like, this can't be real. There's nothing that should be real about this. Until the lights flicker and she looks into the reflection of the mirror, and there she sees Lily. She doesn't believe it and turns around. Lily's not there. So she turns back around and Lily's still there in the reflection. So Shayna thinks she's losing it and just kicks this mirror into shreds, where she still sees, of course, Lily in the background of the reflection. And she loses her mind as, of course, Raw goes off air. Now, what a way for y'all to start off this week with us. Of course, I give you guys and break down all the stuff that happened with the WWE backstage stuff from this past week. And of course, I gave you guys a little taste of the SmackDown recap, and I gave you guys a full Raw recap. Now, of course, there's more coming up, as Jordan's about to give you guys his NXT recap. Until next time, I'm Kevin Jones, Disciples of Wrestling, and that was wrestling.